So welcome to Realising Resilience. My name's Alister Gray, and I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Dr. Lucy Hone. Lucy, how are you doing?
I'm all good. Kia ora, as we say down here in New Zealand. Good to see you, Alister.
Well, it's great to see you, and a huge amount of gratitude for you giving us your time out your busy schedule. And to give you a very brief introduction, and then I'll hand it over to you. Dr. Lucy Hone is the director of the New Zealand Institute of Wellbeing and Resilience, a research, an adjunct
I'm an
fellow,
adjunct fellow.
an adjunct fellow at Canterbury University, a best-selling author and contributor to Psychology Today, as well as multiple other media outlets. So, like I said, it's great to have you here tonight, Lucy.
It's great to be here, and I'm really excited about this project.
Fantastic. Well, maybe if I just give a little bit of context about what brought us together. We reached out, or I reached out to Lucy only, I think, 3 days ago. And really what inspired me to reach out was following a TED Talk, which you gave, Lucy, that really not only inspired me, but it hit me in a really profound way. It was emotional, but I came away from that experience of watching you on stage, just in awe of your courage to share your story as well. And I reached out in hope, really, that you would respond. I never expected to get a response as quickly as I did. I think it was a matter of minutes.
Yeah, that's all good. That was me looking at my emails first thing in the morning. And, as I said to you at the time, Alistair, I responded because our mission at the Institute is what we call population wellbeing promotion, which means mass scale, really on a big size, helping people understand what wellbeing and resilience are from a psychological perspective. I think, when you ask people what they do for their wellbeing, so often they tell you about some physical activity, and that's all well and good, but actually what we really need to learn and master is what's going on in here and how to master that. So that's why I'm here.
Well, absolutely. And I think we both share that passion as well, Lucy. And obviously we jumped straight on a Zoom call, and as soon as we connected, I think, like I said, it became obvious that we both hold a very similar purpose and ambition. So, like I said, it's great to have you on here. And I think maybe a great place for us to jump off would be if you're open to share your story and tell us a little bit more about, what I was able to view on your TED Talk.
So my TED Talk came about, I was actually asked to do one a few years ago, but it felt too soon, and my experience, I guess, was too raw, because I have a pretty unique relationship with this fuzzy concept of resilience. So I was trained in resilience research back in 2009. I travelled from New Zealand to the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia because I was already frustrated about this kind of big usage of this term resilience, and I felt like nobody actually really knew what it was. And it turns out that is the academic department that really do they're doing all the heavy lifting into resilience research. So I went over there, and it was a pretty amazing time to be there because they just picked up the contract to train all 1.1 million American soldiers to be as mentally fit as they've always been physically fit. So for someone like me, whose main quest is to take what is useful out of academia, those scientific findings, and bring them to people in their everyday lives, it was a pretty amazing place to be. And then I'd just come back to New Zealand, my adopted home. Some of your listeners might work out that I'm not originally from here, and I'm actually originally from your shores, London, born and bred. I've been here 20 years though, and I just got back and I just started doing my doctoral research when the Christchurch earthquakes hit. And that first massive, well actually one, and then the second was the biggest earthquake, massive right in our downtown of Christchurch, our central city. It killed 195 people, was just terrifying. We lost, I think, 70% of our buildings, and just the whole thing was a mess. And for 2 years, we continued to have really substantial aftershocks. And in between, every day we have many little kind of nasty little shakes. So that was my kind of first experience of then translating these scientific findings to help people in my own environment, in my own backyard. And I did lots of work with not-for-profits and government departments and all sorts of organizations to help them steer through that period and work out, really kind of training them in the ways of thinking and acting that the research shows help people get back from adversity, you know, to recover from traumatic incidents. And I thought that was my calling. I really did think that was my moment. And sadly, for anyone who's watched my TED Talk, you'll know that I was wrong, because in 2014, we hit family tragedy. We'd gone away for a mountain biking weekend with 3 families. And at the last minute, our 12-year-old daughter, Abi, hopped in the car with her best friend, Ella, who was also 12, and Ella's mum, Sally, who was another gorgeous English woman, just one of my best friends. And the 3 of them were killed on the way down. A driver sped through a stop sign and killed all 3 of them. So I've just had this bizarre experience of being the resilience researcher, doing the kind of professional application, helping others, and then really testing this material in the most desperate circumstances, really. Parental bereavement, incidentally, is known to be one of the hardest bereavements to cope with. And certainly it's, what can I say to any parent? There's not much to say. You can just imagine how bloody awful it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and thank you for sharing, Lucy. And as I listened to your story on TED, like I said, it evoked a lot of emotions, and the sense of sorrow for your loss and the challenges that you were going through. And I remember specifically in the TED Talk, you talked about the days after, Abi's loss and the process of I think you said being on the other side of the equation, how at that time you received a lot of information and you were spoken to a lot and given advice, which I think
wasn't helpful.
You said it wasn't helpful, and that kind of provoked the curious mind in me to ask, looking back on that moment now, what would have been helpful? What would have helped comfort you in that moment?
Honestly, this is just such an easy question for me to answer, because I guess this is what I've been doing for the last 5 years since the girls died, is that what happens when you lose someone, and particularly, so if you lose someone in traumatic circumstances like that, you do kind of get the victim support turn up, and you get more help because people really expect you to, they know it's, you're climbing a mountain. But what really struck me is, so if I asked all your listeners now what they know about bereavement, chances are the only thing they would be able to tell me about is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. Have you heard of those, Alister? Yeah. So that's what everyone knows about bereavement. So they know about these kind of stage models. They also, we were told that within the first few days, we weren't explicitly told, but by reading the literature and by kind of picking up what people were saying, I was made aware that we were now prime candidates for divorce, mental illness, and family estrangement. And I remember thinking, wow, I thought my life was already pretty shit. Thanks for that. And I knew about, I read the literature. So I read about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief: the anger, denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance, whatever they are. And I kept reading that, grief is as individual as your fingerprint, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And this is what you're going to feel, and this is how you're going to, someone else told us that we needed to expect to write 5 years of our life off to grief. And honestly, I just remember thinking, bloody hell, is anyone going to tell me what I can do? So it was all of the grief literature, and actually bereavement the field of academic bereavement is starting to slowly now, not when Abi died back in 2014, but now they are starting to acknowledge that those traditional grieving models of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's and Bowlby's actually there's no scientific evidence to support them at all. People don't go through, set stages of grieving. It's a whole mess of what you actually go through all the time. And it's kind of helpful to know that, these are some of the emotions and physical responses you might feel. But actually what is annoying about those models is they cast you, they make you feel passive, like this kind of, you've got no control and you've just got to wade through these stages. And yet actually what resilience research demonstrates is that being able to take some control and put yourself in the driver's seat and sort of determinedly do whatever it takes to get through is the best strategy. And so I had all this resilience research material, I had it literally at my fingertips in my kind of quite befuddled head. I had this idea that there were things I could do, ways of thinking and acting that would help me get through this terrible time. And so that is what I've spent the last 5 years doing, is kind of creating this field, which I call resilient grieving, which doesn't mean you've got to harden up in grief. It just means there is a kind of active way. There are ways that resilience research can inform the thinking and the behavior of people who are going through any kind of adversity, but also loss, that will help them. What has really amazed me, Alister, is the amount of feedback I get from all over the world, from people who have either read my book or done our course or something else. Really, they just somehow track me down and say, thanks for making me feel okay, that I wanted to survive and I wanted to do things to help me. And thanks for giving us some strategies, because they felt completely, when someone dies, you feel so ineffectual, don't you? And you feel kind of robbed of what in psychology we would call your agency, your ability to affect change. And so the strategies that we write and train people in are not rocket science, but it is quite handy to know them.
Yeah. And I love that concept from, rather than being passive in that experience, you're able to apply these strategies and take some form of control back into that experience as well. Yeah. And some of the things that you said in the TED Talk really resonated as well, where you said what I needed was hope.
Yeah
And that sentence really, it kind of was one of those moments that kind of almost brought an energy into my body. What I needed was hope. And I wondered, for others that are going through adversity and not only in grief but other areas as well, how did you find hope in those moments?
And hope is kind of like, how do we describe it, kind of the energy and the fuel of resilience, and actually hopelessness and helplessness are strongly associated with depression. So you kind of want to hang on to any inkling of hope that you will be able to prevail in whatever you're going through. That is really essential. So I think that's important for people to understand that, to start off with. And I also think it's really important for governments and policymakers and media, people who are at the kind of national level who have an influence here, to understand that when we're going through something as, the pandemic that we're doing at the moment, that don't crush our hope, and I've found myself, so one of the ways I do that, I'll give you a couple of examples, but currently the way I'm doing that is I have been watching the nightly news for the last, sort of 30 days, because I make sure I don't look at my phone during the day at all, because I've carried on working and it's so distracting. So I just kind of block that out. So each night I've been watching the nightly news. The news is changing now. It's becoming really depressing and, terrible and sad and full of all the reality. So I've decided I'm actually going to stop watching the news. So I'm not because I'm being delusional, and I'm not going to cut myself off from reality. And boy, in my line of work, am I aware that there are a lot of people struggling, and certainly we're working with a lot of organizations to help those people who are struggling. But I think what you have to do is sort of put yourself in the driver's seat and work out what works for you. And for me, watching that nightly news right now is going to snuff out my sense of hope that we can get through this. So taking control over, the input into your own head is really important. That's one way you can keep hope going. So, you know, that might be if you've got a friend who keeps kind of crushing your hope and keeps telling you how awful things are going to be and keeps painting this really big, bleak, big picture, you might just want to pull back from them for a little bit. We have choices. This is what this work's about, really, is exerting your choices. But at the time, the form of hope that really came to my rescue in that awful period, those weeks and months after the girls died, was a strategy I was taught when I was in Philadelphia by an amazing doctor called Chris Feutner. And he works in pediatric oncology at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And when he came to lecture to us, I remember thinking, jeepers, you know, what hope can there be working in pediatric oncology? And where he is so amazing is he simply says to families who have been given the worst news, now that all hope is lost, what are you hoping for now? And that beautiful question just demonstrates that actually we don't have just a single hope. So, you know, basically know that your original form of hope, saving this child, taking this child home healthy, has gone. What are you hoping for now? And he said, you know, this opens up a whole avenue of different options for them. Do they want to take their child home and have them baptized? Do they want to stop testing? Do they want to do all sorts of different things? And for me, that question, now that Abi has died, what am I hoping for now? It's sort of, shifted the goalposts for me, so that, you know, my original hope in life obviously was for us to live healthily as a family of 5. Not happening, not possible. So it shifted those goalposts. You can tell I'm in New Zealand, I think in rugby goalposts. I'm just noticing that as I talk to you, acutely aware. Even though we lost the World Cup, I'm still thinking in rugby goalposts. Anyway, so what am I hoping for now? Those goalposts have moved. That I just hope that we stay together and prevail as a family. Which normally, that is the thing that makes me cry, you know, is that, can we do this? It's horrible being a 4. We never set out to be a 4. But I can say 5, nearly 6 years on, yeah, we are okay. And I'm just going to add to you, because I was on a call to America this weekend, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, Jan Stanley, who did the same master's degree as me in Philadelphia. And she said that what she's doing with her corporate clients at the moment is saying to them along the same lines, what is a realistic goal for you now? Yeah. And I think for all of us, as we come out of, we've just come out of real severe lockdown today, to moving to that next kind of level of stage of being allowed out a bit, not completely, but going back to work if you can social distance. And I think for all of us in the year, 18 months, 2 years ahead, to keep asking ourselves, what is a realistic goal for us now, work-wise, family-wise, you know, residential, home life-wise, I think is a really powerful way to look at it.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, it's beautiful listening to what you're hoping for now, Lucy. And I think those 2 strategies are really powerful. I think the first one, where you talk about, you know, we have a choice about what we consume, right? We have a choice about what we engage with. We have a choice about, you know, who and what we let into our lives and into our mind ultimately. And at the moment, we are bombarded with, you know, so much negativity and adversity and challenge that, like you said, it can almost reduce that sense of hope within us. And, you know, I agree. I would love for, you know, our governments to somehow galvanize that hope on a collective level and find ways that can give us hope during periods of adversity.
Yeah. And, in fact, as you say that, I'm even struck by the fact that we don't even have it's more than a choice. Actually, I really strongly feel now the chips are down and, you know, it's a challenging environment. We have a responsibility to ourselves to look after ourselves and really notice whether what we are doing is helping or harming us in our goal to get through. So I think, you know, let's take on that challenge. and know that in earthquake disaster management parlance, we say this is a marathon, not a sprint, which is the phrase that we're all so sick of hearing here in Christchurch. But back we go again, another bloody marathon. And it's, you know, it's true. We have a responsibility to ourselves, those we love, those we care for, those we work with, to look after ourselves and do what we can, take on this mission that we will prevail and get through. Not about toughening it out, because actually that often requires you just crashing out, going to bed during the day. You know, it's about doing what works for you.
Yeah, I love that. And finding what are you hoping for now? I love that outlook, if you like, that there are other gifts or there are other ways for finding hope during times of adversity. You know, I've read a lot of your work over the past few days, Lucy, and, you know, something that really struck was around, you know, our ability to place our attention or our focus on, you know, something different that allows us to feel that hope, or that allows us to, you know, find that resilience within us during times that are tough or through adverse challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a little sticky note here that says, what is your recovery routine? You know, and that's my other big question that I'm always asking people, is that, you know, this is a marathon, not a sprint. As you just said, we do need to, we can't go at it all the time. There's a beautiful grief bereavement theory called oscillation theory, which means that, you know, when you're in a challenging situation, bereavement, you can't be relentless in your grieving. You have to be able to approach it and then withdraw and kind of step away and lick your wounds and recover. And one of the ways we can recover is to have ways, to know our ways of distracting ourselves, you know, to give your poor brain a break. So I think that is really important for all your listeners right now, is to know what your recovery plan is. You know, how do you step away from this feeling of overwhelm and being bombarded with bad news and the scale of this issue all the time? What works for you to top up your own psychological piggy bank?
Yeah, amazing. And are there any ways or tips that you can give for them to plan that recovery?
Well, actually, so that's the number one thing, is to plan, is to be plan and pivot. You know, I was thinking about this today. So we've just come down from level 4 lockdown to level 3, which is, as I say, people who can go back to work and social distance. So my husband and his building sites, they've gone back to work today. So we've got a lot of, everything's changed kind of for us today. But I've worked right through the lockdown and I'm feeling pretty tired, and I was meant to have just had an 11-day holiday. So I've come back to work today thinking, great, I haven't had a holiday. I've done, you know, I've worked flat out throughout the lockdown and really not, everything we've just given away free resources, which is what we wanted to do. But, you know, it's not like I've been paid a lot. And so I'm feeling kind of exhausted. And I thought, okay, so you need a new plan. You actually need to up your plan, your recovery plan. And I downloaded the Calm app a little while ago, and I used it a couple of times, and I've just resubscribed for another month. I don't have it on an annual subscription because that doesn't work for me. I try and subscribe for a month and use it when I think I'm going to use it. So that's kind of part of my plan. But yeah, I absolutely always have a plan, and everyone else needs a plan, and you need your own personalized plan. And then you just need to be able to pivot and shift on that plan, you know, when it's not working. Because if your plan is, for instance, going to the gym 5 times a week, as COVID has taught us, you need a plan B. So having a plan is really important, and being able to continually update, review that plan, say, is this working for me? How am I feeling psychologically? You know, am I all good? Am I firing on all cylinders? Then that's fine. This is, you know, stick to plan A. But when you start to feel yourself sinking, or you start to feel yourself ruminating more, you know, spending more time in your head going over and over things, then you need to up your plan, change your plan, and really dig in to look after yourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it resonates a lot. I shared with individuals in our community around, you know, one point last week, I'd noticed that I was checking my phone more. I was checking my devices more, and couldn't work out why or how I was feeling maybe a higher level of anxiety on a particular day. And I suddenly had the realization that I deviated away from my plan of reducing, my device usage, of reducing the amount that I was being exposed to the news as well. And exactly that, it was a matter of going back to, what I'd set out as a plan, reviewing it, and then, tweaking it. And I think even having the awareness that you need to give that time in itself, the plan, how am I structuring my days? How am I looking after myself? What information am I consuming is a really important part of it.
And Alister, I would ask you then back on that, because I'm curious. So when you realized that your plan wasn't working, and that how much do you berate yourself, or how much, what was your self-talk like? Are you kind to yourself, or do you berate yourself in that moment?
It's a great question. And for years I would have berated myself. And I've went through, a real process of radical acceptance and looking at ways that, when the self-critic comes in, I find a way to find the kindness and the self-love and compassion that has taken a long time to build. Coming from Scotland, the critic is a much easier voice to listen to. And I think over, the past 5 years, my own journey has helped shape a different narrative internally. So yeah, I'm now able to recognize when I've went off piste, and when I do, no longer do I kind of beat myself up or, criticize myself for it. It's a bit of acceptance in the moment, and then, really looking at what can I change now? I love the question you shared earlier, is what I'm doing or is what I'm thinking, helping me or harming me? I think that's a really beautiful question to ask yourself in any moment. It gives you a segue to a new world of opportunities and a new way of thinking or being.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good on you.
I love how you've just flipped it on me, Lucy.
No, that's good. That's awesome.
So obviously, I really appreciate your time, Lucy, with the questions that you've answered. And I think, like I said earlier, having watched your TED Talk, and I would encourage everyone to watch your TED Talk and also to look up your incredible work. Like I said, I've found myself lost in your work over the past 3 days since we initially connected. And, everything that you write, everything that you've talked about on TED, I just feel incredibly inspired by it. But not only that, I think you give a great, a great strategy and group of resources to people to help them through adverse challenges, particularly, grief and your own experience. So I'm incredibly grateful for us being connected. I am looking forward to, Lucy has very kindly offered to record a short video where you'll share 2 or 3 strategies with us. Again, we'll be posting that on the Realising Resilience YouTube page. But, we would love to keep on collaborating and connecting, Lucy, with you as we move forward with our plan to try and impact 1 million people on a global level.
Yeah, us too, Alister, and for all of your viewers, for us, the most important work we do now is working with schools to get their whole school communities understanding the dynamics of resilience, the ways of thinking and acting that can help them be resilient. And I really think that is, if we care about well-being as individuals, as communities, as a nation, or as the planet, then you have to understand it. And the only way we can really teach people to understand well-being, everyone, is if we get this awareness, understanding, and they grow the capacity of that understanding in schools, which is why all the work we've done in the last couple of years has been just working with schools to hear from them and work out with them what are the ways that they can start to build well-being and resilience in schools, what works, what doesn't. And that is, I think, the next really big step for us all, and certainly, as a nation. So I'd love to be part of that work.
Well, and listen, it sounds like this is something else that we're hopeful for, right?
That is what I'm hoping for. Absolutely.
A big shift in education where well-being and resilience and all of these incredible concepts that you've learned and are now teaching could be delivered at a grassroots level. And I think you and I both share that same passion to impact education in a pretty profound way.
Yeah, and I think there's a real awakening demand for it too, amongst parents, educators, school leaders, everyone knows that the model is pretty broken, and that actually if we're going to equip our young people to be able to succeed in the world and live, feel good and function well. And if we're going to keep our educators wanting to come back to work, and if we're going to have young people want to go into education, that broken model has got to be changed.
This is incredibly inspiring. So maybe on that point, Lucy, if people are interested, if we've got, I'm sure we're going to have lots of teachers, educators, corporations, where can they find out more about this work? Where can they find out, about the incredible work that you guys are doing at, the Institute?
So just go onto our website, which is www.nziwr.co.nz. And you can find, we've got lots of free resources there. The best thing is my colleague, Dr. Denise Quinlan's podcast, because we wrote a book last year, which you can find on there, but we wrote this book, and then in order to do so, we interviewed people who were working to promote wellbeing in schools across all sorts of different countries. And so really this book is the best kind of snapshot of how you take a whole school wellbeing approach to wellbeing. And the podcast, which is, out there, free and accessible, people can just go to it immediately, is called Bringing Wellbeing to Life. It's on iTunes. It's also on our website. So go and listen to some of the amazing things that educators are endeavouring to do. For instance, to bring coaching into schools, to have all cultures, absolutely be able to be identified with and accepted in their schools. Really fascinating work. And there's huge progress being made. And I'm just going to say, the UK's a bit behind the 8 ball here. So you might have to up your game, people.
Listen, we're going to take this message out far and wide, Lucy. So, I wouldn't be surprised if your inbox gets full now. If you respond to them as quickly as you respond to me, you're gonna need someone to help you with that inbox.
Nobody loves their inbox, do they? Oh, Jesus. Right.
I think it's really inspiring, and like I said earlier, we hold a similar ambition to spread this message far and wide, especially at a grassroots level. So we'll post information on the podcast. Did you say it's Bringing Education to Life?
Bringing Wellbeing to Life, because it's broader than that, but season 2 was just all about education.
Amazing. Bringing Wellbeing to Life.
She's from Dublin. She's got that real great, beautiful voice, and we've edited out all her swear words, so it's pretty clean and beautiful.
Amazing. Well, we'll get posting the links below this video as well. But Lucy, I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you once again for sharing your story this evening. Thank you for coming on here and allowing me to ask questions of your experience. And I think it's a beautiful gift that you're now giving the world through your own lessons and giving back, and teaching people how they can access that resilience within themselves. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Alister. And I'll talk to you soon.
Perfect. And have a lovely day over in New Zealand.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.